Hello, everybody. Mike Mills with Mike Mills Mortgage and Finance here, and this is the Texas Real Estate and Finance Podcast. And today I am bringing in a good friend of mine and realtor here in DFW. Like I mentioned in my promo, a lot of times I have people on here that we're talking about how to video market, or we're talking about how to fix your toilet or whatever, anything related to real estate. But I like bringing on local agents because, especially in markets where things getting a little challenging, which they have been recently, it's nice to get a perspective of someone that's going through it, because everybody always has answers and everybody always has solutions when they're not the one selling the house. But when you're actually the one selling the house and you're trying to work with buyers and find leads, it's a whole other ballgame. So I always like to get perspective on that. And that's why I brought Ms. Kelsey in with us today. Hello. Well, let me click my little button there. Hello, Kelsey. How are you?
Good. How are you?
You get cheering?
Yeah.
I always got to do cheering. It's very important.
Got to do the cheering.
That's right. So thank you so much for coming in. I appreciate it. Now, I know that, you've been in this game for quite a while, and you've seen all kinds of fun little markets and the ups and the downs. And, I think we're in a place right now in our real estate environment where a lot of people have gotten into the business over the last 4 or 5 years, and they're dealing with their first actual downturn in activity. Now, there's a difference between home prices and sales volume, right?
Mm-hmm.
And right now, home prices are still up, so everybody waiting on the crash to happen, where the prices were going to come, some chair there, where they were going to come crashing down. They're still waiting because that has not occurred.
It's not.
But what has happened is that the volume has slowed down, right? We have less people buying homes, we have less people selling. Right. Because if you're sitting on a 3% interest rate right now and you are living in a house that you bought for $500,000 that's worth $750,000 or $800,000 right now, which is not unheard of, then if you want to move, you're going to have to move to find a $900,000 house and pay 7.5% interest. So, so we're going to get into all that today, and Kelsey's going to give us some insight on previous markets and what she's been through and how she's kind of made her way to stay in the business and keep plugging along, because I think everybody needs a little nudge every once in a while. So, but let's start with, first off, how did you get into real estate? What brought you into this crazy business that you've stuck around for so long and kept doing?
Well, mostly past history, and I didn't want to teach anymore.
Yeah.
I was a high school teacher. I taught technology classes.
Okay.
And loved the kids.
Pull that mic just a little bit closer to you. Yeah, there you go.
Loved the kids.
Okay.
But was not loving administration and how it goes. So shocking, I know.
There's a lot of teachers right now that are doing that, actually.
Oh, yeah. Well, I can't even imagine what they're going through right now.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a long time ago that I
Yes.
ducked. Yeah. So I left 2011. I went to graduation on a Saturday and started real estate on a Monday. So I had just gotten remarried, and that was a full last year in teaching. And my husband's like, well, if you don't want to teach, well, then do something else. And that's all I needed was some support.
What was it about real estate specifically, though?
Growing up, my dad was a builder.
Okay.
And there's a sickness in that.
Yeah.
My brother owns a large roofing company out of Granbury, Glen Rose area.
Okay.
DT Roofing, plug.
Okay.
And my degree was in computer aided design.
Of course. I mean, that makes sense, right?
I drafted for 2 years for architects and found out they wanted me in front of a computer for 10 hours a day. And you know me well enough that that's just not enough people interaction. So then I got a job at Farmers Insurance, which I thought, this is nothing that I was doing. Well, it ended up being I was a foundation adjuster.
Okay.
Wow. So I was back to drawing.
Run the gamut.
I was back to drawing, and that's when it was covered in insurance. So now it's not.
Oh, really? Okay.
It used to be covered under the policy.
Really?
If there was a leak.
Okay.
So that was my job.
Only slab leaks.
That was my job to go out and find out if there was some sort of leak that was causing the house to shift. If it was Texas shift, not so much.
Right.
Put some water around your house.
Right. Yeah.
So now we need water.
Yes.
No more water. So I did that until Farmers was kind of known for just running you into the ground if you did a good job. I mean, I was working till 2 a.m. with babies, and I was like, I'm out.
Yeah.
Called one of my plumbers to tell him that I love y'all, but I can't do this. And he's like, well, I'll hire you. And I'm like, what? So I ended up.
You were in high demand.
Working for, because he was doing that testing all over the state of Texas for many companies, not just us.
Okay.
So he had 9 trucks, and they every day, each one of those did a slab, did a hydrostatic test at least on a house. So, and met agents, and then they had to come back in while I drew all the plans and drew up. He goes, exactly what the insurance company needs. Yeah. So that would be great. So probably one of my most favorite jobs ever, except for maybe real estate.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, it's gone quickly. But I loved him, and the people were nice, and I knew what I was doing. I had my son. He let me bring him for a while till I was like, oh no, take care. We're good. I can't. He's moving.
Yeah. Hey, look, absence makes the heart grow fonder,
yes,
right?
Yes.
You got to have a little separation.
So, and then, it was just kind of, it didn't pay a whole lot. I was driving to 75 and Park every day, putting about 500 miles a week on my car.
Yep.
And I was driving an Expedition. So great gas mileage.
Yep. Got the kids and just
all the things.
Eating up gas.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I then got a job. A good friend of mine worked for the Mansfield ISD, and they had a technology department, and they were looking new technology department.
Right.
It is where the police station is now.
Okay.
It's behind the old Willie Pig.
Yes.
And
I live right across the street from there.
Yes, you're well aware then.
Yeah.
And they needed a CAD teacher. Okay. And I was floored. I'm like, they do not. It took me forever to find enough classes to just get a degree. And there's no way.
Now they're starting them in 8th, 9th
sure
grade.
Enough, they were teaching computer aided design.
Wow.
And so I started there, and I ended up, that's obviously, unless you're just interested in building and architecture,
right?
Why else would you do that? And kids that are 15, 16, 17 years old, they are like, didn't have that.
It's really hard. You brought up something a minute ago when you said that, you got your degree in that, and then you ended up in real estate or whatever. But, we have this, we tell our kids this too, which I'm trying to get away from more and more, but we have this expectation sometimes of our kids that at 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, that they're supposed to know what they're going to do with the rest of their life. Right. It's like, you need to get your degree, you need to go and figure it out. It's like, yes, but don't get me wrong. There are some kids, all right, some people that come right out of the womb and they know exactly what they're going to be,
what they want to
right?
do.
And they're gung ho from the very beginning, but that's not the norm. I would say the norm is, they're just trying to find their way. I mean, I'm almost 45 years old and I still barely know what I want to do. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where, we have this, we put this expectation on our children to say that they have to find their path so quickly. And we're, you, me, a lot of people I talk to are great examples of people that you're going to go through 10 careers, in some cases before you find the place that you fit the best.
Yes.
And I think more often than not, especially because of the way work is, that you end up in a place, you may not necessarily have the most passion for that particular thing, but it suits your lifestyle the best.
Right.
Right. And so you gravitate to something where, which is what's great about our business is that, yes, we work, quote unquote, we work all the time, but we don't. I mean, we're not working 24/7. We're just available. Right. You're available in the evenings. You're available on the weekends. That's part of being in real estate, but it also gives you an incredible amount of flexibility because if you're a mom or, I grew up and my dad, wasn't always there. So for me, it was a big part of when I had kids, I wanted to make sure that I was going to be there as much as I possibly could. And my career has allowed me to be able to do that. And so I think that, letting kids try different things and explore different options without forcing them into locking down on one particular thing. I think you're going to find your path to happiness much quicker, than if you just think it's supposed to be this way. Right.
Right. Totally. All those moves that I made, there was always a back reason.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be a teacher.
Yeah.
I would have gone to school to be a teacher.
Right.
It was more that my daughter was going to kindergarten. That would put me on her schedule. And that would put me home during the summers. Yeah. And it got me closer to home. I was no longer driving. I was in Mansfield, so I wasn't going that far.
Terrible.
So, there was a reason behind each one. The first one was because that was my degree. The second one was because it was paying more and it was giving me a car and good benefits and things that I didn't have. Yep. Then the teaching. Then from there, then it was the plumber.
Yeah.
And to him, it was just a better environment in general.
Yeah.
But I really needed to quit driving so much and making less. So, it was just, there was always a reason. It was something that was for our life. It wasn't necessarily for me.
Right.
The real estate is for me.
Yes. Yeah. And here you're driving again all over the place, right?
Yeah. And here I'm driving all over the place. Saying I'm going to need a bigger car, but that's a whole other story.
So you got out of teaching and you got into real estate, and you did, if I'm correct, what a lot of realtors do, which I think is a good path, which is you went into what we would call one of the big box brokerages, right?
Right.
Went right into Remax, which is where we met. Anytime I meet new agents, and, especially because I used to do things with champions, sponsor classes, and agents would ask, different brokerages. And I would always tell them, I was like, look, I think a great place to start, unless you have, a lot of background or you have someone around you that's going to mentor you or whatever, a great place to start is with the big box brokerages, right?
They have a system.
They're all going to offer different things, the broker that's in that particular, because it's all, franchised essentially. And, so there's not always a perfect situation, but a lot of them are good because they're the offerings that you have, the training, the mentorship, the availability to ask questions if you're in the right place, which, that was a great place that you started off. Really gives you a lot of backstop, when you're first starting out in your career. So tell me what your experience was like there. And then, since then you've moved on, and kind of gotten to the smaller, which is a normal path for a lot of agents.
It is.
So talk a little bit about that.
Okay. So I totally agree that, even getting into, I've told most people, I'm like, get into, what do you need?
Right.
Or do you have a sales background? Because really the one conversation that I think is really missing in real estate is that ultimately we're sales.
Yeah.
And your personality gets you so far and your knowledge gets you so far, but sometimes you have people on the fence that are just struggling because it's such a big purchase.
Yes.
It's just, you just can't ignore that.
Yeah.
And I think a little bit of sales training would be great.
Yeah.
But it's usually people that don't have that, which I would say is probably 95% of people who get into real estate.
Yeah. Well, you came out as a teacher. I mean, at least you were doing the farmers thing a little bit. So you kind of had a little bit of that, but
but not really.
Not really.
I mean, not really. I knew homes.
Yeah.
And that was my love, was home.
Right.
I can sell homes. But, don't ask me to sell paper or off it. I'd be, that would be just killer to me.
Well, but even the word sales. So I have a little bit of a peeve with that because I
raise
think
up the hair on the back.
Well, it's just, it's got a negative connotation, right? When people say you're in sales, they're like, oh, you're going to sell me what, they're thinking of the boiler room and
I'm in sales with my children.
Yeah. The coffees for closers and all that stuff. Yeah. But really what it is it's communication.
It is.
Right? How well can you communicate with another human being? How well can you make it clear when you're telling them particular information? Because you can hear the same kind of information from two different people, but one person makes it much more understandable and much more concise or simple. And then the other person's, because they don't understand it as well, maybe you're dancing around a bunch of words and you never really get. And so you walk away confused with this person, but then with this person, you're like, oh, okay, I understand. Right.
I get it.
And that's really what sales is. It's not like, we're not pushing used cars out here. We're just trying to help people understand how the process works so they feel comfortable, because it is a big decision.
Well, and I am of the school that I quickly learned that, to me, I will overeducate.
Yes.
There is a reason why a ridiculous number of people who go into real estate were teachers.
Yeah. Yes.
It works.
Yes, absolutely.
Because you're teaching.
Yes. That's exactly what you're doing.
I have had people look at me and go, I trust you. I don't need all this.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
That's fine. But most of them appreciate, I do a lot of first time home buyers because I said, if you get tired of me talking, let me know.
Yeah.
But I'm going to keep telling you, until it kind of makes more sense.
Yeah.
Because until you've owned a home, you're just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah,
I mean, everything from
thing.
Insurance to, I got a call of, where do I turn the gas on? Who has that? And I'm like, well, here it's Atmos. And, everybody gets it. So, but it's just being part of that is my life.
Yeah.
I've owned multiple homes and et cetera. And so, but they're not there yet.
No.
I told them, I said, you'll be an expert at this very soon. And they're like, God, I hope so. I'm like, you will.
Yeah. It's just living,
But I overeducate. And if they ask me to stop, I stop, so, always overinform, when you've got sellers that our houses are sitting longer right now and they're panicking because they remember a year ago, 2 years ago, where they were, you could barely get a sign in the yard.
Yeah.
And somebody was throwing offers at you at list and above, so.
Would you say that that was a lesson that you've learned along the way? Because I think with newer agents, especially, there is this, we all want to make people happy, right? The goal is to make someone happy.
Sure.
We want to please them. We want to make sure that, everybody's in a good mood. Nobody's upset, right? The whole deal. But the problem with that sometimes is when the market's good, you can just whatever. Sure. You don't have to have hard conversations very often, right? If the houses are selling like crazy and the buyers are getting offers accepted and everybody's blowing and going, great, right? But inevitably, one side of the market or the other, you're having to have difficult conversations, right? If it's a seller's market, you're having to have difficult conversations with your buyers. If it's a buyer's market, you're having to have difficult conversations with your sellers. But if you don't have those conversations, if you let the seller or the buyer drive the transaction and tell you what they're going to do, we want to offer this, we want to list our house for this, we don't want to do this repair or whatever. It's not that you can't do that, right? Sure. You can do whatever you want, but the success that you're going to have is going to be slow going because you're the expert and they are the buyer and seller, and you have to tell them how the market is and what's happening in this, but you have to do it in a way that, doesn't piss them off, basically. Yes, basically. So tell me about, like, what was your learning curve on that? Did you go through any experiences when, the bell kind of clicked on you for that one?
Well, a lot of it was just confidence that, okay, I know what I'm talking about and I can do this. And if they don't, I always have ways out. So it's like, okay, we can try that price. Yeah. We can try that, but we will know within 2 weeks. We will know within 2 weeks if somebody's not interested or we're not getting showings or, it's crickets, kind of thing, especially right now. That's pretty much what you run into.
Yes.
So it's like, sure, we'll absolutely try that, but I've told you what I see because numbers don't lie. Sometimes that bites me in the butt a little bit because there are unicorns out there, and sometimes it's just that's exactly the buyer that's out there looking for that specific house, and you don't know that until you actually put it out there.
Anything can happen.
Absolutely.
Can happen. Yeah.
So what I have learned is be willing to try just about anything.
Yeah.
I am past the days of offering a stupid amount below. There's still a few people that go, just offer it. And I said, no, because if you really like this house, they're never going to speak to us.
Right.
Again.
They're going to be insulted. Yeah.
They are never going to.
This is their home. I mean, this is somebody put a lot of work and effort into that, and you're basically insulting
even
them.
if it's an investor, they just put a lot of money into it.
Yes.
It's money. So
you've lost the right to have conversations with them further.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
Well, so you went from the more big box brokerage, kind of got your feet underneath you a little bit and started to figure out, how this whole game works. It's unfortunate, I think, when people get into the business. And I do think some people tell agents this, but I don't know that it happens as often as it should, where, you go through all the classes, right? You go to the trainings and you do the CEs and you're just in classes. And all the classes are great. And you need them because some of them are required. But that's not how you sell real estate, right?
No, you got to pull the trigger at some point. And I have that conversation with myself a lot.
Yes.
I am a habitual learner.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Well, but it's normal because I think everybody suffers from this a little bit where you're working, right? You're not doing something. You're doing something.
Oh, sure.
You got up, you got dressed, you got yourself ready. You went to a class and you sat in there for 4 or 5 hours or whatever it was. And you learned what you learned and you walked out and you accomplished something, right?
Yes.
But that's not what the end goal is ultimately, right? You got to sell homes, and that is interacting with people. That is, finding your sphere, whatever that may be.
The basics.
Exactly. So when you pushed your way, when you kind of got in the big box, you're in the classes, you're doing everything, and now you're like, okay, I got this. I feel like I got this a little bit better because the splits are a little worse there. You're paying a little more commission, all that stuff.
Exactly.
So everybody takes that next step. So what was it in your mind that you decided, okay, I'm ready to kind of go out, to the smaller, more boutique style place where I can make a little bit more money and maybe not have quite the same, resources that I had with the bigger one?
Well, with Remax, my concern there was that they did not promote that office.
Okay.
And so I felt like, where you kind of sign up is that the name is, if you're paying that, the name is helping you.
Yes, absolutely.
So I just didn't feel like locally, because real estate is hyper local. So they were not really doing what I thought they could do.
Okay.
And then a good friend of mine became the manager of our Arlington office over at Ebby Halliday.
Okay.
So I went there.
Yes.
And
which is
I
another kind of bigger.
It is.
Yeah.
It's in fact, it's corporate.
Yes.
Very few of them are corporate like that, which that is
wonderful.
That's
right. It is. It's not the franchise setup.
That is wonderful and great when you're new. In fact, I've told other people they wanted suggestions and they were new. I said the same thing you said. If you want training, if you want a professional, classy place that, they're not just going to let you go do whatever you want to do.
Right. There's also going to be structure.
There's going to be lots of structure. Is Ebby Halliday's excellent.
Yeah.
So where I moved from there to a smaller brokerage was because in COVID, like a lot of people, my husband took a pay cut.
Yep.
And I really started looking at my numbers because real estate agents are not so good at that. The ones that are brokers.
Yes. Yes.
Just so you know.
Yes. Yes.
So I really started looking at my numbers and I wanted to just kick myself because I had been what I would say overpaying for 3 years easily. Probably about $30K a year.
Yeah.
So in my split. So which not their fault. That's the way it was structured. I was doing really well.
You knew what
my
there was
business was growing.
Yeah, there was no surprise. Like you knew what that was.
It just never dawned on me that there is a point where you start getting more successful that you need to reevaluate what's going on. So
hey, Marianne's checking in with us here.
Hey, Marianne.
So, you said the numbers thing, and I think that's a big piece of this. And, I interact with agents all the time and I'll ask them, how many transactions did you do last year? Or what was and they're like, I don't know. I have to look. I'm like, this is the kind of stuff
that
like you have to know, you know what I mean? Like but what was it about? What was the realization in your mind when you actually started looking at the numbers and you got a place in your mind where you're like, oh, wait a minute. Like I really need to be paying attention to this. Right.
Yes. Literally. And it was simple. It wasn't that I did some weird deep dive into a spreadsheet that was just you writing it all down.
Yes.
Looking at it going, hang on now. If I went over here and there's a lot of flat fee places now, which is where I've gone.
Well, looking at the numbers, you see the transactions, you know who the buyer and the seller was, and then you go, where did that business come from?
Right.
Did that come from a lead or did it come from something I did with my brokerage that got me that?
Yes. I don't pay for leads.
Or did it come from my sphere? Right. And if all of those transactions are coming from your sphere and you're paying a big portion to the big box guys and you don't need the education anymore or, limited anymore.
Or I can go get it.
Yeah. You can go get it on your own.
Go get the ones I want.
Right. Yeah. So then that's when you go, oh, wait a minute.
The light bulb comes on.
Yes,
big time. It's like, what was I thinking? So that was my reason for the move.
So speaking of sphere stuff, what have you found doing it all these years that has been the most successful for you as far as like your, I know you do a lot of community interaction and involvement. And I preach that constantly to people. I'm like, you have to find activities to get involved in whatever they may be, because we have this back to our earlier statement about going to these classes, you feel like, oh, I'm working because I'm in this class, but working is going to lunch with your friends, is going to volunteer at the shelter, like all that stuff. So talk a little bit about why that piece has played such a big role in your business.
Well, and it was something, honestly, I heard first at Remax of agents that were there because they would take agents that were more successful and sit down with whoever wanted to listen and say, this is what I do.
Yeah.
And it's always very straightforward. It is, people think, oh, you volunteer and you're thinking homeless or women's shelter or something like that. Your volunteering could be that you're coaching the little league team. It could be that you are the HOA president. There's not.
Don't be an HOA president. Nobody likes them. I'm kidding.
As long as they're nice.
As long as they're nice.
Fair. But I mean, how else do you get to know your neighbors? I mean, that's awesome. Or in my old neighborhood, we have National Night Out. And I used to run the National Night Out. I would send invites and probably the top number we got was probably about 100 people there.
Yeah.
And they loved it. Absolutely loved it. So they just kept seeing me.
Yes. Well, it's crazy you say that. So the National Night Out thing, I've had conversations before where like, well, I don't know what to do. I'm like, look, your neighborhood alone, right? If you got something in the mail or you got a Facebook message or something from people 3 doors down and they said, hey, everybody in the neighborhood's getting together on whatever date. We would love to have you. We're all going to be in the street, whatever the situation is, right? Not everybody, because everybody's got different schedules, but a lot of people are going to go to that. Right. So, and if your answer to that is, well, my neighborhood doesn't have that, it's like, well, then why don't you start
Create it?
Yeah.
Create it. If not, just get involved.
Yes.
My last neighborhood, I did it with another real estate agent.
Yeah.
She's lived there way longer than I have.
Sure.
So, but that's a great way to get to know your neighborhood.
Yeah.
You just never know. People click differently just because there's already one real estate agent that's doing it. They click differently.
Say more about that. So you did it with another agent, right? Yeah. And a lot of agents and even lenders, we're like, oh, we can't, everybody's always in competition, right?
Yeah.
So why did you feel comfortable in your mind, being like, yeah, I'll absolutely do it with this other agent and not be concerned about that?
Well, one, I don't want to do it by myself.
Right.
It's always easier if you've got some help. I did years of doing it by myself, and thank heavens for my family.
Yes.
They were on point. But I am not, when I first started, I was on a team. Loved that woman to death, but she had been in real estate for 40 years, I think.
Right.
And she was old school. It was very that cutthroat, that don't share what you know. I'm like, it's the same.
Right.
We all know the same thing. There's no big secret, and I saw that, and it was just habit. It was not that she was trying to be nasty. It was just protecting her business.
Yeah, that's what she'd probably been taught. Yeah.
And I heard it across the board in kind of that age range. And I had an uncle that was in real estate for a long time. Yeah. And I kind of remember conversations with that. My dad had his real estate license, all the above. So I had heard that enough, but looking at the new group coming in, it's like, because you can get stuck in, there's too many real estate agents in this area. There's, it's DFW.
There's a lot.
So there's tons of them.
Yes.
But I tell people, all you've got to do is go drive over any overpass and look at the sea of homes that you can see.
Yeah.
And it's like, I guarantee somebody's not working that neighborhood.
There's enough business.
So there's plenty of business.
Yeah.
So having that mentality, and plus that's not me. I used to be the one that fixed the copier. I was the one that, here, let me have it. Let me see what I can do.
Yes.
And even at Ebby, I heard a little bit of that, but we would sit around and talk about, brainstorm new ideas and, hey, you're doing that. Can I do that? Yeah. Here's my tag that I put on that, or whatever it was. And it just goes so much better that way. And everybody has their people, everybody has their sphere, and yes, they overlap. If you really want to start a brand new area somewhere, then move into a brand new area. It's just kind of up to you. But I've never seen an issue because most people are selling 1 a year, 2 a year.
Yes, it's not a lot.
So the reality is that very few people are doing this as a full-time job.
Well, and that's part of the thing too, is that, I've talked to several agents in here before, and some that have done really well and some that are, it's just part-time and, whatever. And, sharing the secrets, as you would call it, right, of what you do, your marketing efforts, your, how you send people emails or how you communicate, all of those things, everybody, there was, like you said, the old school mentality of keeping it close to the vest. But I think more and more people realize that in order for you to do these, or in order for these things to work, you have to do them, right? Yes. Like it's one thing to know.
Portion.
Yes. Yeah. It's one thing to know that you should send, birthday messages or send thank you cards or whatever, whatever.
Right.
It's
notes.
A whole other thing to actually do it.
Yeah.
Right. And it's the 80-20 rule to its fullest extent, right? It's like 20% of the people are doing all the work and 80% aren't. And that's where, markets like this come into play, because it's so challenging right now that if you didn't know what it was like before and you came into this market 2 or 3 or 4 years ago, you didn't,
you've never seen anybody do that. Even if you're in an active office, you've never seen anybody do all that stuff.
No. Yeah. You just would wake up in the morning, and every once in a while your phone would ring with somebody who knew that you had sold a house or something. And now you're doing, and you're like, this is easy. This is the greatest job I've ever done, and then we get to a place where, the crickets start chirping and you're going, wait a minute, what what happened to all my business? Where did it all go?
Yeah.
And then it's the ones that can go back to or had been continuing doing the same efforts over and over and over again,
Right.
regardless of where their business was, that have the success. And it's just work, right? At the end of the day, it's just work. You just got to get up and put shoes on and go out and do it.
I tell people all the time, most of the time, what I'm doing is reminding people what I do.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, we've all heard the stories of somebody's uncle who forgot they were in real estate, sold their house through someone else. And you're just like, and it's always that hit you square between the eyes.
Yes.
It's like, it took 2 years before people quit asking me how teaching was.
Yes.
That's my fault.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what are you doing what kind of things are you doing to remind people that you're still selling homes?
Well, I think when you're 12 years in, they pretty much got it down now.
Right.
And so that's pretty much the majority of my conversations.
Yeah.
A lot of it is being out in the community. I go to a networking group with the chamber, just to talk to you got to treat it like a business.
Yeah.
And plus been working from home and that doesn't work for me.
No.
If
you're going to be a realtor, you have
function,
to be out. Yes.
I need to get out.
Yeah.
I go there. I've, go support different charities and things. But we also, my husband's part of the Margarita Society.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's a whole, and these are all very different groups of people. Now the chamber and the Margarita Society, those people overlap.
Yeah.
But then probably the most, I guess I could say the most business I've gotten has come from my church.
Yes.
Because I'm there every Sunday.
Yeah.
And when you start talking to somebody and they refer you to somebody else, I mean, that's where almost all my business is. Very rarely do I get a random show up. I don't pay for leads.
Yeah.
I never have.
Yeah.
And I never will because I don't think they're worth it.
Yep.
It's just somebody else running their business, trying to make more money.
Yeah.
And they're usually junk.
Yeah.
Very rarely are they decent.
Yeah. The conversion rate on them is really low. And there are agents that have success with it, but you have to be committed to that process.
I could throw for the money that I could be putting into leads, I could throw a party for everybody I've ever sold a house to.
Right.
And have them come over.
Yeah.
And that'd be way more fun.
Yes. And probably beneficial for you.
And beneficial.
Yeah.
It's just like, hey, come on, I miss you people, because you get there's two ways to handle a deal. And this is any kind of sales, which is it's either transactional or it's relational.
Yes.
Well, I can't be transactional. Transactional is just basically come in, get what you need, sell them a house. Nice to meet you. And they're gone.
Yes.
And they never hear from me again. That's the intention.
Yeah.
My intention, sometimes I'm not so good at it, but my intention is never to do that. And it's like, I miss my people.
Well, you have to have a thought.
So much time with them.
You have to have a thought towards the future, right? Every transaction is a transaction, but it's also future transactions.
Well, sure.
It's mothers and brothers and
referring me
family.
to other people, other family members.
Yeah.
Hey, we've got friends moving here from. I'm gonna give them your number. Great, thank you. I really appreciate that, because and I tell them that's how my business survives. That's how is from people like you. So.
Well, and if you are, this is something that I preach to agents all the time too when we talk about these things is, you have to be everybody in your world. It needs to think of you when they think of real estate, and they need to call you for everything related to real estate.
Yes.
Their roof, their plumbing, their landscaping, their mortgage, their whatever.
And
right?
It is hard to keep a list of those people.
Yes, but you want them calling you to ask you questions because you want to be the source of the information.
Yes.
And I think this is changing now, but there was also the old school thought of an agent would get a phone call from somebody and they would say, my insurance is, I think I need to shop it or whatever. And, well, I'm not an insurance person, but here's my insurance guy, call him. Right. Or, hey, rates look like they went down. I think maybe it's time to refinance. Well, I'm not a loan person. Here's my loan guy, call him.
Yeah.
And so people would call, but then you just kick them off to other people, which is not a necessarily bad thing. But what I would say in the alternative is that, learn about that piece of, learn about that information. So if someone calls you and says, hey, rates went down, I think I should refinance. You're like, hey, give me 1 second. I'm in the middle of something. And then you call me and you go, hey, Mike, would it make sense to refinance right now if somebody had a rate, blah, blah, blah. And then I'll give you the answer. And then you call your client back and say, hey, yes, if you're at this point, it could probably make sense, blah, blah, blah. And if they dig deeper, then you go, okay, let me
Here's
pass you
the
off.
person.
Yeah. But every little bit of information that you can
Yes.
take in from your landscaper and your plumber and your electrician and
Right.
learn the whole thing, because you want to be the go-to for all of that stuff.
And some of that just comes with time.
Yes.
Time and experience.
Yep.
I mean, you heard of my jobs.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I have a few of those. I mean, I'm just enough to be dangerous, kind of thing. But it also gave me the knowledge to be able to relay to them, say, hey, here's a professional, but let me tell you what I know.
Yeah.
And I am not the professional. This is just what I know.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, most of our job is keeping everything on the rails.
Yes. Yes.
It is.
Yes.
It is when everybody gets worked up.
Yes.
You
trying to calm everybody down.
Some of it is also to let them know that I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
I totally agree with why you're coming unglued.
Yeah.
This is, but
empathize. Yeah.
But my go-to comment is in 30 days they'll be gone.
Right.
So don't get wrapped up in this person being a jerk. Do you really want the house?
Yeah.
If you really want the house, in 30 days they'll be gone.
Yes.
And they go, that's true.
Well, it's a very emotional transaction.
It is.
It's their home. It's their family.
Understandably.
Yes. Yeah. So they're going to go through all a roller coaster of emotions. Yes. And yes, you do have to be the therapist and keep everybody calm.
Unrealistic and realistic and all the above. I mean, it's the nature
of the beast.
All of it.
Yes. But that's again, that's the sales part, right? Or the communication part and the setting expectations and all of that kind of stuff.
Lots of expectations.
Yes. Yes.
It will save you in the long run.
Yes.
The more you say up front, the more they go, hey, she said that. She said that might happen. So it's not as big a deal.
Right. Well, speaking of expectations, so obviously, the market has changed quite a bit. It's, again, it's more from, I wouldn't say from the buyer and seller's point of view, there has been big changes. It's just normal. But for agents and lenders and people in the business, title companies, the volume of transactions has declined fairly significantly. Right. So we're in a place now where, every person's important. Every deal is important. Every person that you can find that can help you, achieve your goals for the year is going to be key. So what have you found as far as setting expectation with buyers or sellers coming into this market now and going, okay, here's where we are. Like, what are you telling people right now as they come into, buying and or selling right now in this market?
Well, sellers need to understand the first thing out of the gate we tell them is this is not to 2022 up to July.
Right. Yep.
Literally it stopped on a dime. It was, we all just went, okay. For a little bit we were relieved because it was,
you got to rest.
It was so nuts.
Take a breath.
And it was not good. I mean, everybody kept coming up to me and saying, oh, you must just be killing it. And I'm like, no, I was like, this is awful. I said, I have people offering, anywhere depending on the price range, 5,000 to 20,000 over and it's not losing. Getting it.
Yep.
They are good buyers.
And guaranteeing appraisals and all kinds of stuff.
They are good buyers. People not inspecting things. I would never recommend that.
Right.
But just not getting it. Yeah. And I mean, I probably wrote, I think I just deleted like 15 offers that I wrote for one couple. And they ended up taking a break until they checked in and came back again the summer and bought one.
Yeah.
Because everything, it was perfect. Yeah. Everything, they were willing to wait. They just rented for one more year and it just slowed down and they were ready to go.
Yeah.
So, but as far as sellers, I tell them, we are looking at, if you've priced it right, we're looking at about 30 days on the market, 15 to 30. Now, if it's like stellar unicorn, it's got all the cool stuff, it's priced right and it's ready to go, you may go sooner than that.
You may get multiple offers even still right now.
Absolutely. We still have multiple offers.
Yep. Just not 30.
Yes. Now, and multiple offers we're seeing on a lot of them are the ones that need all the work. Because right now they're lower priced. Yep. Investors might come in. It's a big rental market.
There's a lot of cash buyers right now.
Yeah, it's a big rental market. So people, as long as they can still kind of make their money back, or even they're just putting their money somewhere.
Yeah.
A lot of these prices, I go, there's no way they're going to get their money back every month. And really, it's not that. It's they've got a place to put it where it will continue to grow.
Well, and there's very few other options right now that aren't incredibly volatile and like the stock market. I mean, I personally, I've had money in places and I've pretty much pulled all of it out except for property. I mean, those are the places because you just don't know. Yeah. There's too many variables right now and where the economy could go that, it's just kind of like, well, let's wait and see. But the one thing that hasn't gone down is the real estate. And that's why you're seeing, I think right now, I read something the other day, it's something like 25 to 30% of all of the transactions that are happening in the US right now are cash. Wow. Because big money investors or small are taking their money out and they're buying the real estate because they at least know
they see the same thing you do.
It's going to hold the value, right? At bare minimum, I'm not going to lose my money, right? I'll hold my money. Right. Maybe I'll have to hold it a little longer. Maybe it'll take a little longer to sell or whatever, but I'm not going to lose money. And that's what they're scared of because, the market that we came from was incredibly unhealthy because, and I'm sure we all have these conversations with buyers all the time, especially it's like, look, in June of 2022, your interest rate would have been 3%. Okay. But you were paying $50,000 over the list price on that house. Okay. Well, the price that you pay for that home, you can never change that because that's what you paid. Right. Okay. Your rate can change. It can go up. It can go down. I mean, not, if you refinance or whatever, I mean like adjustable rate stuff, but those kind of things can move, but the price that you pay for the home is there. Right. And right now, even though it's a little slower, the market is healthier because it's still not, we still are still in a seller's market. I would very much argue, depending on the location. It depends on the spot. But at least now if the house is listed for 350 or 370, you're going to get it for 350 or 375. And yes, your interest rate's going to be high, but there's a very good chance that it's probably going to come down in the next couple of years, and you're not tied to that.
Paying 15, 20, depending on your price range.
Yes.
15, 20,000 over.
Right.
I mean, finally,
yes.
And like you said, the interest rate is higher, but you're not paying that. And in some cases, I'm back to where some of my first time home buyers, if they need help with closing costs, they can ask for a little and get it.
Yeah. Depending on the circumstance.
So it is, or just the other way around. If there's something that needs to be done to the house before or after inspections, it was like, well, your choice is, are you keeping it or not?
Yeah.
Are you bailing or not? Because somebody else is right behind you.
Yes.
That will take it as is. Now it is more, hey, we've got a problem with the roof or, something that would not mess with lending. So, that whole sink is leaking. We need another $500. Put it in seller concessions because then you have cash.
Yes.
Then it's not still coming out of your pocket. So,
well, and more often than not, if a seller is selling a home right now, they have to sell for some reason. There's a reason that they're selling.
And there's a reason the buyers are, sellers definitely. Sellers are
but, definitely. 12 months ago, people were just like, let's just see. Like I talked to a lot of people. I was like, let's see what we get. I was like, you just sold your house just because? Like, why not? Let's see what happens.
People took advantage of all your money sitting in your house. Now you can take out loans against that and do that. But they were like, I could sell it, downsize, pay off my bills, and just lighten the load in general. But then they, of course, had to find something.
Yeah, well, that's the flip side of it.
But they had the cash, typically. They had a lot of cash in their house.
Well, and that's the situation that we're in right now is our biggest problem is inventory. We don't have enough homes. And that's why the prices are so incredibly high is because there isn't enough homes for sale. And the reason that there's not enough homes for sale is because if you don't have to move, all right, and you bought your house in the last 5 years or you refinanced it or whatever, which the vast majority of people have, then you're sitting on a 3% or 4% or 2% rate and you could sell your house, but then you're gonna have to turn around and buy a house in this market, at a much higher price if you're trying to go up, or if you're trying to downsize, you're still going to be paying more. Your downsize might be the same price that you paid for the house that you're in right now, right?
Yeah. So unless you're willing to be creative and just hang tight.
That's what I'm saying. So that's why you don't see the movement that we're having or that we're used to is because people are just kind of in the sellers, the buyers are still trying to buy, but the sellers are like, I don't need to do anything right now. So I'm just going to sit tight for a little bit. But the other side of that coin is that when it does change, which it will, 12 months, 24 months, it's going to happen. Right. And they could even just go down to 5%. We're not getting back into the 2s and 3s again because that was artificial. But you get into the 5s and now all of these homes start coming for sale and all of these buyers. But what that does is that drives the price up because now all the buyers are like, oh, we're in now because the rate isn't 8%. And so we're still back to this kind of unhealthy market, So what have you been telling your first time home buyers who are really getting hammered by all this because prices are so high? Like, how are you dealing with that?
They are, I'll give them props. They're more prepared.
Yes.
I mean, they are coming in and, when I've got someone looking at 250 and at first I kind of cringed and then, I'm looking, they're willing to go out a little.
Yeah.
So that, I think more people are willing to do that. They're
Yeah.
like, I don't want to be right in the middle of it.
Yeah.
So as long as they're willing to do that, then they usually get a little more bang for their buck.
Yeah.
A newer home maybe, and maybe even a yard that doesn't like butt right up against the next one.
Right.
And a house that maybe doesn't need tons of work, that isn't, 50 plus years old.
Well, the remote work thing has helped that a lot.
Yes,
because
absolutely.
people can work from home, so they can decide.
And I am shocked how many of them actually are, because you heard everybody going back. Well, a lot of people did go back, but there's a lot of, especially first time home buyer bunch, which that's usually, to me, that is, I have, how old is he? About 24-year-olds, 25-year-olds that are getting married and buying a house. It's still really important to them.
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely. So, and they see that that's what's holding value, and, they may have to hold on to it a little bit longer than the people they just watched in the last couple of years. But they are all in.
Yes.
They're all in with here's what we've got. It could be, they just saved their money from an inheritance that they got somewhere, and this is where they want to go. So,
well, I've run into that quite a bit with younger home buyers, in that, everybody has a good old days syndrome. When I was a kid, we used to.
Oh, sure.
But
I do it.
But I have to give credit to the younger generation, the Gen Zs, millennials, I don't know, but the Gen Zs, because they went through, to some extent as children, they went through what we experienced in the housing crash, and seeing parents lose retirement accounts, and seeing,
well, that's what everybody talked about.
Jobs.
In the house.
Yes. Job losses and everything else. And they lost a little bit of the U.S. materialism that we've had for so many years, where you had to buy, get all the things. Like, the boomers in our family, they had to own everything, credit card debt out the eyeballs, and all, they had all that stuff. And the next generation, those Gen Zs, came up and saw, wait, I don't need to live that way.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need to have the newest thing. I don't need to have the best car. I don't need to have all that kind of stuff.
Right.
I can put value in, and truly, there's just more education. Honestly, because if you want to find something out, if you're curious about a topic, when I was a kid, I had to go ask my crazy uncle, or, the neighbor next door, like, how do you do this? He's like, blah, blah, blah. You don't know if he's telling you the truth. He can be totally full of crap.
Whatever.
But now you just go on YouTube and you're like, how do I buy a house? Or what do I need to do to save for retirement, or whatever? And there's thousands of videos and resources out there. So that
conflicting.
Well, yeah, you got to sift through.
That.
Yeah. But they're sharp. They understand, what's true and what's not. And once you see enough of it, you kind of figure that stuff out. But so speaking of kids, though, you are bringing your kids into the business to some extent. Some are already there.
Bringing themselves.
And they're bringing themselves, which, hey, all that means is that they had a great example, right?
I guess.
Because they're like, hey, mom's loving this. We're going to go do this. So what's that been like? And what's their experience been compared to what yours was when you started?
Well, I tried for years to get them to get them in it and to show an interest, even just, this would be a great part-time job while you're in school, zero interest, zero, because I came up with it, I'm sure.
Sure.
So,
when you're offering up the idea, it's a terrible idea.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Yes.
So then I had one, my older daughter, Peyton, she and her husband were living in Maryland. He was working with Navy for wrestling.
Okay.
Well, she got into real estate and loves it. Absolutely loves it. But because of what he does, they move around.
Yes.
Every couple of years, she goes, okay, I can't keep doing that. So she's taking a break from it until hopefully, knock on everything, she might be back here. But then hint,
move back.
And then Savannah, she actually started her real estate classes while she was still in high school.
Wow.
Now, she was graduating the COVID year.
Right.
That it was the end of that year where they didn't have a prom. They didn't have all those things. So she was that end. The other child was we didn't go to school all year, but we had a prom and stuff like that. Yeah. So she started taking her classes, and she's been in it 3 years. She was the assistant to the brokerage, and she learned
some of the admin stuff,
tons, with all of that, and has sold some houses. And now she's like, I think I'm ready to gear this up a little bit more, so. But it's good. It's usually me that gets the phone call.
Sure.
What do you think about this, Mom?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well,
that's good.
Do this, do that. Make sure you communicate. It's usually in every conversation.
Yep.
Because it took me a while for that to stick.
Yeah.
The more that you talk, the more that you explain it, the less panic There is.
Yes.
So,
well, then people are clear and they have trust and they understand what's
yes.
coming and
Yes.
they know,
Well, they feel like you know what you're doing.
Yes.
So when you've already said it, they're like, yeah, she told us.
Well, yeah, you're establishing yourself as the expert.
Yes,
so they can feel more confident because if you're look, if you're with somebody that has confidence in what they're saying and they're sure about it. Now, sometimes, people are sure and confident and they're wrong, but more often than not, you at least get a sense of, you're feeling good because you understand that, all right, I don't know what I'm doing. I've never done this before, or I haven't done this in 5 years or whatever the case may be. So I need someone to hold the reins and tell me that it's all going to be okay.
Yes.
Right. And that's your job. You have to be that person. And, it's not always the best job, because you get to deal with the good and the bad.
Sometimes you're doing it for the other agent.
Yes. Oh yeah. Hey, that's the way it is. Those. I mean, yes.
In any profession, I'm sure, it's not just ours.
There's good and bad in all things. You know what I mean? But I always tell people, like, you should feel good about that because if you're having to pull slack for somebody else, then that's called job security, right?
It is.
Because you know that it's like, if that's what I'm going up against, then I'm feeling pretty good, right?
Yeah, that works.
I'm feeling like I'm going to be okay.
Got it. Yeah.
So what do you tell your daughter right now as she's getting ready to maybe start selling on her own? Like, what kind of habits or what kind of practices are you trying to tell her that she needs to focus on to make sure that she can make this a long-term career and not just something that's, good for the short term?
Well, she is almost 22.
Okay.
So her market, her sphere, her people are very different than mine.
Right.
So, but it's funny how much I've told her, I said, you need to, every time you go to a house, you need to shoot a short little video and it needs to be on your reels, on your stories, on your whatever.
Yep.
And anytime you have an open house, throw it out there, just blanket, whatever.
That's where they're looking.
Look. And I said, because everybody likes to look at houses.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how we all get here.
That's
isn't
right.
it? So I tell her to do that. And she's at a point right now where her age group is about to be graduating college, is about to be getting married. Right. And I said, they need to see you. Like I said, everything I do is reminding people what I do.
Yes.
And so it is amazing. So she started doing some of that stuff and it kind of cracked me up that all of my mom's friends,
they're all
we're going, Savannah's killing it. And I'm like, what?
Like, wait a minute, hang on.
Yeah. We have just as much of a problem with social media in that bunch than we do.
Oh yeah. They're on it all the time.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So, but I tell her that I'm like, see, people are watching. Yeah. I said, your group may not be commenting. I said, no, your grandmother's group is all over. They're all on it. She goes, oh my gosh. But it was just proof that what I was saying. So she is going to have to go that route. And I told her, I said, take care of your people that you've helped before because they've worked with you before and they'll work with you again. But I can't remember the percentage it is. It's something ridiculous. It's like 60 something percent at least that every time they study this, it is, going and asking people, have you bought or sold a home? Yes. Did you like the experience with your realtor? Yes. Yeah. They were, she were wonderful.
Right.
And then they go,
did you use them again?
They go, would you use them again? Oh, absolutely. What was their name? They go, oh, what is that? And they're asking somebody else. And it's like, what was their name? Well, it's because we haven't stayed in touch. Yeah. So, I mean, that's across, I don't care how old you are. That's across the board. Yeah. And those are areas I struggle in, it's like, I've had a VA and then a virtual assistant and not had the VA. And it's just, those are the structural things that are non-negotiable.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
well, I think we all strive to be better all the time. Right. And nobody's perfect, right? You're not going to solve all your problems at once. You're not going to have all the answers. You're just trying to be a little bit better at what you're doing every day. And you're learning some things that work for you and you're learning some things that don't.
Right.
And
they could work great for someone else. They it doesn't go with your personality.
Exactly. And you're just trying to get to a place where you have enough activity that you're doing on a regular basis, whatever that is. And that's the thing that I think, agents that are looking or grasping for something, they're always, well, what are they doing? What are they doing? And that's fine. But you have to find the thing that you like to do.
Right.
Whatever that is. If you want to write notes all the time, if you love writing handwritten notes, then do that. But if you're writing handwritten notes 3 or 4 times a day and you hate it, then stop.
Don't
because
do that.
you're not going to like it. You're not going to keep doing it.
It almost comes through in your note.
Yes.
They're like, oh yeah, sure. Thank you.
And, we hear all the time now too. And I talk about this a lot when I do things like this, but social media, do social media. And I do think, and the reason being isn't because of, going viral or being whatever, but like you said, you have to be in front of people, right? As often as you possibly can. They have to see your face and they have to know what you do. Right. And because lives are so busy, right? Everybody's going all the time. We all have our phones, we're in the car texting, we're sitting at lunch with our best friend and we take a phone call or whatever the case may be, right? All this is happening all the time. It's very difficult. It's not the old school way. You can't just stay in front of somebody by going out to lunch with them every once in a while because everybody's schedule's crazy. So social media is an avenue to where you can stay in front of people and see them on a regular basis. But if you don't like it and you don't use it,
either pay someone
or
to
just
do it for you or don't.
I don't know that,
what works for you.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, but then if you're not going to do that, then you better be a dynamo at getting the girls together and having lunch every week or, being in the PTA or being at your church, being a greeter or what. I mean, you've got to have other things. Right. Yeah. And so, but the truth is everybody has to find their lane and your lane is not going to be the same as somebody else's. Right. And and sometimes it's trial and error. You got to try this. And if it works and you like it, great. But you got to try this. You don't like it. It didn't work. Then don't do it anymore. Yeah. But you can't be all things to everybody all the time.
No, right? It's not possible. You will exhaust yourself trying to do it.
So where do you think all this is headed? Like you've been through some ups and downs in the market. What is if you have your crystal ball and you're going to go, okay, this is what it's going to look like in the next 3 years. What do you think?
Well, and really my crystal ball involves listening to multiple people who are way smarter than I am talk about it. And then I take all those pieces and kind of say, okay, am I hearing the same thing? Am I not hearing the same thing? The last thing that I heard, I'm kind of waiting. I keep thinking we're kind of due for all that round of people to come back up and talk to us again. Yeah. But I keep hearing that that the economy itself is doing better. The job rates are doing better. That I think a lot of that was, hey, let's drive up the cost of everything. And so all those people that didn't want to go back to work had to go back to work. Yeah. So we're finally seeing the results of that. Yeah. So and of course, as the economy gets better, then eventually they will back off on some of those rates. Again, like you said, I mean, if 5 would be great. Yeah. Yeah. That'd be awesome. And I would love it if the media would just zip it, personally. Yeah. Because they pulled up this huge frenzy and it's like, this is what the market does. Yeah. This is what it does. Yeah. Ask anybody older, what's the highest interest rate you've had? I think the highest I've heard is 18% that they sold a house at. Yeah. So we are nowhere near that. Nope. Yes, would we like them to come down a little? Sure. But it is not the terrifying situation that has been made out to be. Yeah.
It's a recency bias. It was the last, major economic recession that we had was all based around housing. Yes. So when
it was a mess. I mean, banks were loaning money they should not have been loaning.
Yes. And the entire reason we had the crash was because of housing and mortgages, right? Where this one is completely different. It's totally a different situation. So everybody just expected that there would be this massive housing crash and everything would come crumbling down. And now that it hasn't come to fruition, it's like, okay, well, where's the collapse going to occur? And I do think that there's still some things that are a little, anytime you're headed into an election year, which is what we're headed into, buckle up, everybody. It's going to be a nightmare.
And there's that.
But anytime you're doing that, then there's a lot of, I guess you would call it gamesmanship that occurs with some of the numbers and what's happening in the economy, good or bad, on both sides. And so it's hard to figure out exactly what's going on sometimes and what's good and what's bad. It's like they had job numbers come out today and they were down from where they were the month before. The unemployment rate's still okay. But it is trending downward. But the thing that gets missed sometimes in those numbers is that we're in an economy where incomes aren't quite that great, and people want companies want people back in the office. So what's happening to a lot of people is they're saying, you know what, I don't want to do that. So I'm going to start my own business, or I'm going to go work another side gig job or whatever. And so there's some extra jobs that are being kind of dropped into the market that maybe aren't there, but it doesn't mean people are doing poorly. It just means that they're changing. They're shifting on what they're doing. And so, you know, and the other issue is that, you know, part of the inflation that we had, a good part of it, was large companies taking advantage of the fact that the news was telling us there was inflation.
Yeah.
So
they just lockstep right in with
my
that.
Starbucks went up 50 cents, but it actually went up $1 because they were like, well, they'll pay $1 extra for it. So why not get that? And now corporate profits.
Everybody just says, oh, everything's more.
That's right.
And I still hear people say, oh, we have a supply issue. I'm like, do we? I thought we kind of solved a lot of that. No. I don't think we have a supply issue. No.
Well, that's happening with cars. I mean, I'm in the market to buy a car. My daughter's about to turn 16 soon, so I'm looking at different cars.
For a new one.
And I've been kind of diving into it a little bit because I'm a research guy, but they're just not making as many. Like that's part of it. I mean, they're keeping the supply low, but on purpose.
I think they're doing it on purpose.
It's
I'm
on
like,
purpose.
why don't we have these?
Yes.
We are all back to China shipping all their stuff and the chips and all that stuff. I'm like, there's no reason this should still be like this.
The profit margin on a new car that they got pre-COVID is pretty much doubled on what their price their profit per car doubled, and it has not changed. Even with the demand dropping down, it's only gone down a little bit. So, I mean, there's all kinds of stuff like that.
Buying cars.
That's right. There's all kinds of stuff that's happening like that in the market. And so that's what I'm saying. It's in this weird place where, you know, corporations are still making a decent amount of profit, but it's going down some. The job numbers are a little unsure what they are because people are transitioning into different careers and starting their own businesses and doing side gigs and, you know, getting out of the 9-to-5 grind, you know. So there's just, we're kind of in a transitional economy to some extent, and we just don't know how it's going to play itself out a little bit. But the anchor to all of this that has not changed again, like we said, is that real estate prices have not gone down.
They have not gone down.
They have not crashed.
They have not. And especially in Texas.
Yes.
I mean, oh my God, you know, there's California and then there's, I think even Florida's had some problems. New York, it's just tanked. Yeah. But, you know, Texas has always been solid.
Yes.
I mean, even when it was horrible in what was that, 2008, 2009.
But it wasn't even horrible.
Texas was not as bad as what the rest of the country looked at. Nope. We've usually got, you know, I always hear it's oil and gas is backing us up. You know, we've got some stability. So I'm not sure if that's it or our state's just in a good position or what
it's just, I think when COVID happened and especially, you know, this was very, very prevalent on the West Coast. And when everything just shut down and the government and the governor and they were telling you what to do. This is what you have to do. You can't go here. You can't do that. You can't. And people are like, wait a minute.
Open your business.
It's like, wait a minute. I live in the U.S. Like I can do. What about freedom? I can do whatever I want, right? And so in Texas, we're like, whatever. Like, come on, let's figure it out. Florida. So everybody moved here because they were just like, okay, I can make adult decisions in Texas, and I can't make adult decisions in certain other parts of the country.
Yeah, we just need to keep reminding them that.
Yes, and the land, we have an abundance of land, and there will be more houses that are being built. Just takes a while to get there.
Yeah. Well, and they're cautious because they got caught.
They want to be careful.
You know, they got caught a year ago of, you know, all these houses being on the ground and people just going, interest rates are killer. It's like, so they've learned to how, you know, right now the new home bunch is keeping us running.
Yes. New homes are
especially the bigger companies because they have they're the builder.
Yep.
They're the lender.
Yep.
They're the title company. And then now I'm hearing some of them are the insurance. So, but when you have all of the companies, you can smudge those numbers around and make it work.
Yep.
And like, okay, what can we get people in with? Well, right now, what are they worried about? Interest rates.
Yep.
So they'll it's not the price of the house. They'll get them in with interest rates.
Yep.
And it works. And it's letting people get in new homes and good spots and not for crazy money.
Nope.
I mean, yes, they're up, but, and they're going to continue to go up. So they've really been, I've had a lot of people have said, have you looked at new? And then you've got a warranty for, you know, solid year plus 2 years for structural pretty, and then you've got the foundation for 10. So people are like, oh, this isn't a bad idea.
Yeah. I mean, and it is, I joke all the time about it, but I always say the best time to buy was yesterday, because you're just not going to see prices come down. Nope. You're not going to see, there's no crash because there's no flood of inventory coming. It's going to continue to grow, and it is a safe place to put it. Yes, rates are high, but that can change as well. But it is the safest place right now to hold your value for your dollar, and also have a good idea that it's going to increase, that you're going to appreciate with that value over the
3 to 4% a year.
Yep. So there is the world's not ending, but the market's still coming along. You just have to, it just isn't, your phone's not ringing. Different. Yes. You got to work.
You work it. Yeah. You got to work.
You got to work. And that's the difference these days. So, all right. Well, we're over an hour already. So, went really quick. But anything you want to say before we go, just as far as tell those agents out there, give them that spring of hope. What's your spring of hope for them?
The spring of hope. The spring of hope is that do the basics. Do the basics and work it, and activity breeds results.
Yes.
It just does. That is the one thing about sales, that you can always go out and do more.
Yes.
You can always go out and do more. So don't feel like you're stuck, or, these people know more than I do, and I'm never going to be able. Oh, please. I know plenty of people that have been that have done this for 30 years. Well, they don't learn anything new.
Yeah.
And they're kind of stagnant where they are. And they, some of those new things are good, but don't let the flashy distract you.
Right. You're only limited by yourself.
Yes.
Right? That's the only limiting factor. Well, thank you so much for coming in.
My
I
pleasure.
appreciate you hanging out with me for an hour. And thank you to everybody that was listening and hung around. We'll be back again next week, but keep on keeping on, and things are going to turn around. We're coming into school time, and now it's really going to get busy. Really and truly, August is, people don't realize this, August is actually kind of a slower month for real estate, because people are coming back from vacation and they're getting ready to go to school. And then once school starts, I promise you, your phone's going to start ringing again, because now everybody's back into the routine, and they got to figure out what they're going to do.
And they have more time.
That's right. They got more time to figure it out. All right, guys, everybody have a good weekend, and we'll see you next time.